Today is day one of converting a MiniMoto from petrol to electric and seeing how fast we can get this thing to go. So today I've just picked up this MiniMoto. I got it on eBay for £87 in a condition as spares or repair not working, but obviously that doesn't really matter. We're just interested in the shell so that we can convert this to electric. The bike sits at just under 50 centimeters tall, and as you can see by the helmet, this is not a very big bike at all, and it's going to be great when we can get this going. So what we need are three main things in order to turn this bike from petrol into electric. The first being an electric motor, which I have a 72 volt 3000 watt motor with the relevant speed controller and a twist throttle with 3 speeds and reverse as well. The third component that we need, which we don't have yet, is the battery, because what I first want to do is strip out all of the motor and everything from the inside of the bike, see how much space we have. The motor doesn't really have a choice of where it sits. It needs to be able to drive the rear wheel. So we're going to work out where to put that first, and then think about the speed controller, and then go for a battery, because we can buy the battery in different dimensions. And so we want to make sure that we get the right size. So I'm going to do everything else first, then buy the battery. I have already tested the motor, and that is running, so there's no concerns there. What we also have is a small pit bike tyre that I got, and wheel, because this has a different sprocket on it, which is different to the bike that it currently runs and runs a slightly bigger chain. So that's another issue that we'll have to solve, but this is what connects to the motor, and so we don't really have a choice on that one. First things first, this bike has been sat for a few years. It's very rusty, well, some surface rust in a few places and on the forks down here. So we just need to clean that up. The inside looks pretty mucky. So we're going to get this thing looking really nice, and then we'll start taking the motor out and then think about our next steps. In the end, I also want to wrap this bike, make it looking nice and unique, and we're going to see how much of a budget we can complete this on. This bike in the end should achieve, I'm going to guess, minimum 40 miles an hour, but it could even be anywhere up to 60 with this motor, and given that it's going to be a lightweight machine. I just wanted to give some more context of how small this bike really is, and one of the best things about it is that it fits in the back of my car, which means I can easily transport it to whichever location I want to go to with no hassle at all. Also, cat for scale. As you can see, we've now completed taking off the fairings of the bike. We can see a bit now more clearly how the surface rust is, but again, nothing structural. I sat on the bike and it did look fine. If you're wondering why I haven't started the bike even in petrol mode, it's because when I got it and I took off the top of the fuel tank, I saw that it was already damaged here. So that would just be a case of replacing the fuel tank, which isn't too much, but we're going to move on with our move to electric. So the next step is we're going to want to clean up all the fairings, but before we do that, we want to take this motor out and see what we're working with. So I think it has about 3 bolts underneath holding the motor in and 1 around on the back side. So let's get that done now. So we've got some of the bike back together now here, and we're just looking at our options for where to put all of the main components. As we put it back together, we've put on our new chain, which does need to be lengthened in order to reach the motor. We've put on our new handles, including our twist throttle with our 3-speed and reverse. So that's all good and sorted. The wires are long enough to reach and everything. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to take this, which is the old fuel cap, which obviously leads to no fuel tank anymore. And this is where we plan to have our ignition switch. So, which is a nice key start so that we can lock it and unlock it. My plan is to drill out the center of this fuel cap, glue it onto the top here, and then the key can sit nicely at the top, and I think that would be a good place for it. Alternatively, could put it somewhere on a side fairing like you see on Harley Davidsons, but I think being at the top would be quite cool and nice and easy to access. So in terms of our 3 main components, we've obviously got our motor, which we don't have a choice where it goes, and that makes things a bit easier for us to decide where the other things go. So our motor is going to sit slightly off of this platform, which I plan to extend. Then it's a case of deciding where the speed controller and the battery are going to go. And I've located about 3 places where we could put these. So we've got one space here and cavity at the front, which we also have the extra room that goes all the way up into the fuel tank now. And then we have another vertical slot here at the back between the motor and the rear wheel, going again vertically up here. The last point is underneath the rear seat, which we can see there's a nice flat bit down there. It's about 100mm wide, so 10 centimeters. And so we could also get something going here, but there's not as much distance between the rear tire, but we can get a longer vertical distance all the way to the back seat. So I've looked online, I've looked at the different options for batteries, and I've actually ordered two. I've gone for a 10 amp hour 72 volt battery and a 20 amp hour battery. The reason why I've gone for both is that if the 20 amp hour battery, which should fit here, is not specific to the millimeters that they said on the design, it won't fit. And so I want to make sure this is rideable, and there's a 2-month delivery time on the batteries. So we've gone with the 10 amp hour one as well, which is thinner and longer, so that one would go along the edge here. For the speed controller, we're planning to put this, and it's going to be difficult to mount, but this will go up vertically at the front and slightly into the fuel tank, and this way we'll be able to access everything. As I said, it's going to take 2 months for the batteries to arrive, and then it'll be the moment of truth. So until then, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure the bike's in good shape. I'm going to extend the chain, fix a metal plate across the bottom, which should hopefully act as a platform back here to hold the battery and also to hold the motor on, as it currently doesn't have enough support. We're going to buy extra length of chain to extend this, and I also have some color wraps, so I might be changing the color of the bike. We'll see how that goes. I've never done it before, but I'll get back to you in the next video in 2 months once the motors have arrived, the battery has arrived. I should mention what the amp hours will do for us in terms of battery. So with a 10 amp hour battery, the reason why I don't particularly want it is because by my maths, it will run for about 15 minutes at maximum drawing power. Now, the thing about this is that's not really long enough to have a good time. You probably want to be able to go out longer than that. Although the max speed is probably somewhere around 50 miles an hour, which is ridiculous, and you're not going to be sat at that for the whole time. So in reality, let's say we're doing half of that, it's most likely going to last for half an hour, which is enough. However, I just wanted to be on the safe side, get the biggest battery that I could, and a 20 amp hour would obviously double that, so you're talking half an hour at full speed and more like an hour at half speed, or 20-25 miles an hour, which is much more reasonable. I'm sure that this bike also is not going to be very comfortable to ride for a long time, but I want to have all my options covered. Hopefully we can fit the 20 amp hour battery in, but if not, we definitely have our backup and we'll still be able to get some good use out of it. Let me know what you think about the project so far. I'm definitely open to suggestions on what can be done and any ideas. I also am trying to do this project without any welding, as I have no experience in that, and so I'm just trying to do this and come up with some slightly innovative solutions to make this work and be fully functional.